Very quick change there.
So, I was wondering if you could tell me what some of these things have in common. So we have a knitted hat, a scarf, some nappies, a marrow,
Which is quite heavy.
a toothbrush, some toilet roll, some money, some shoes, and a pushchair. So any thoughts what these things might have in common? They've all been donated. There you go, Terry, you got it. They've all been donated to the mission in the last couple of weeks. There's a lot of stuff in the news at the moment about the cost of living crisis, and it is a worry for all of us. But we are really, really grateful that we're still receiving donations. And all of these donations will be given away or lent to people that need them. Or the shop donations, they'll be sold at low cost to people so they can afford them. So all of these donations are going somewhere else, but they're all due to people's generosity. And today we're talking about generosity. So I gave you some definitions to have a look at and asked you to find which one was the definition of generosity. Did you think it was easy? No. So which one have we got? With which number do we think is the definition of generosity? 5 or 6. So I went with number 6. This is what the dictionary says. A willingness to give help or support, especially more than is usual or expected. Number 5 is the definition of kindness. And I do think it is very similar to generosity, which is why it's quite hard doing these fruits of the Spirit talks, because Darren talked about kindness on Sunday, and I'm trying not to repeat everything he said, but talking about generosity today. Did you work out what the other definitions were? They are the other fruit of the Spirit. So definition number 1 is love. Number 2 is joy. Number 3 is peace. 4 is patience. 5 is kindness. 6 is generosity. 7 is faithfulness. 8 is gentleness. And 9 is self-control. And I thought, those of you that haven't been at the other talks in the series, we've been looking at the fruit of the Spirit, which is quite a strange term from the Bible, which talks about different attributes that grow in us if we accept Jesus into our lives. Did you notice anything else when you were reading the definitions? Because I think the thing that came to me was how much they overlapped. And even though we're talking about these 9 separate things, they all overlap. And actually, they're all attributes that bring us to be the person that God wants us to be. I was going to say something and I completely forgot what it was. But never mind, that's fine. It was very hard to find definitions in the dictionary that didn't mention the name of the thing. And yet when I was at school, whenever you had to write a definition, you weren't allowed to put the name of that thing. You can't say generosity is about being generous as the definition of it. I was cross with the dictionary, but I found them in the end. Right, I'm going to read you a short story from the Bible now, which is a parable from Luke's Gospel. It's in the New Testament, chapter 12, verse 13 to 21. And in my Bible, it's called the parable of the rich fool. Then someone called from the crowd, "Teacher, please tell my brother to divide our father's estate with me." And Jesus replied, "Friend, who made me a judge over you to decide such things as that?" Then he said, "Beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own." Then he told them a story. A rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He said to himself, "What should I do? I don't have room for all my crops." Then he said, I know, I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have enough room to store all my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and I'll say to myself, my friend, you've enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything you worked for? Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. Now the parable doesn't sound very nice, does it? It's obviously a shame that the person died, but what it's highlighting is that you can't take wealth with you. You can't take your money or your possessions, and it doesn't really matter what you believe about where you're going when you die. As a Christian, we believe we're going to heaven, but whatever you believe, you're not taking the stuff that you've got here with you. There's no opportunity to take those things. And therefore, the desire that many of us have to acquire more and more stuff, and this farmer's desire for more and more crops, is fruitless because you don't know when your time is up. So what else could the farmer have done? He had way more than he needed. Maybe he could have shared it. He could have given it to other people and blessed others with the surplus that he had. And we are finding that's what people with allotments do this time of year. This is why we've got a marrow. Because people grow things in the allotments, which is brilliant. They often have excess if they've had a good harvest, and then they bring them here and they share them. I'm going to read you another story now. It's not out of the Bible. It's quite well known, you might have heard it before, about the businessman and the fisherman. There was once a businessman who was sitting by the beach in a small Brazilian village. As he sat, he saw the Brazilian fisherman rowing a small boat towards the shore, having caught quite a few big fish. The businessman was impressed and asked the fisherman, how long does it take you to catch so many fish? And the fisherman replied, oh, just a short while. Well, why don't you stay longer at sea and catch even more? The businessman was astonished. But this is enough to feed my whole family, the fisherman said. The businessman then asked, so what do you do for the rest of the day? The fisherman replied, well, I usually wake up early in the morning, go out to sea, catch a few fish, then go back and play with my children. In the afternoon, I take a nap with my wife, and evening comes. I join my buddies in the village for a drink. We play guitar, sing, and dance throughout the night. The businessman offered a suggestion to the fisherman. I am a PhD in business management. I could help you become a more successful person. From now on, you should spend more time at sea and try and catch as many fish as possible. When you have saved enough money, you could buy a bigger boat and catch even more fish. And soon you'll be able to afford to buy more boats, set up your own company, your own production plant for canned food and distribution network. By then, you will have moved out of this village and to Sao Paulo, where you can set up an HQ to manage your other branches. The fisherman says, and after that? The businessman laughed heartily. After that, you can live like a king in your own house, and when the time is right, you can go public and float your shares in the stock exchange, and you will be rich. And the fisherman asks, and after that? The businessman says, after that, you can finally retire, you can move to a house by the fishing village, wake up early in the morning, catch a few fish, then return home, play with your children, have a nice afternoon nap with your wife, and when evening comes, you can join your buddies for a drink, play the guitar, sing, and dance throughout the night. The fisherman was puzzled. Isn't that what I'm doing right now? And this story is not about actually being generous, but I think it highlights about what we're saying about not storing up more than we need. There is no point for the fisherman to go and do all the extra work. He knew what he needed, and he stopped at that point. He used the rest of his time to play with his children and to have time with his family and his friends. It might be we spend the rest of our time volunteering or whatever it is that you want to do, but there was no need for him just to be getting more for the sake of it. And I think when we talk about generosity, it's about us not wanting the more for ourselves, but having the more to give out to others. We often think about money when we're talking about generosity, but there's so many other ways to be generous. You can give time to somebody, you can listen, you can share your skills, give advice, you can open your home and share a meal. As the people who took the Ugandan refugees into their home, that was a very generous thing to do, but they weren't doing it in terms of giving money, they were giving the space and sharing their lives with them. A friend of mine, they had children about 5 years after we did. And as we finished with our children's toys, we generally just passed them on to this friend. And she kept on about our generosity and how brilliant it was that they had the toys from us. That didn't actually cost us anything to give the toys away when we'd finished with them. But yet they were so grateful, and they got so much more and had to buy very little for their children, which they were really pleased about. So now we're going to look at countries that might or might not be generous. There's a thing called the World Giving Index, which is an annual report where it looks at 3 different measures to calculate which country is the most generous. I didn't even know they did this. I thought it was fascinating. So the measures are donating money, volunteering time, and helping strangers. And what they do, they look at what percentage of people in that country do each of those things. And they work out from that which is the most generous country. Apparently, helping a stranger is the most commonly performed activity worldwide out of those 3. And 2.5 billion people have helped a stranger in the last 10 years, which I thought sounded like a lot, but then I thought actually the population of the world is a lot bigger than that. And you think maybe more people need to help strangers. But I think the list of countries might surprise you. So we're going to see which countries do you think are in the top 10 of the most generous in the last year. What did you say? Brazil. No, Brazil are not on the list.
It's just a shot in the dark.
It is. I think all of this is a shot in the dark. India are not on the list. You're testing my geography if I need to know if it's an African country. United Kingdom are on the list. We're number 7 in terms of the most generous. Yeah. No, Finland are not. Switzerland aren't. USA are number 1. They are the most generous country. They've got 61% of people donate to a cause, 72% will help strangers, and 42% will volunteer. That's what the American scores are. So number 2 is Myanmar, which surprised me. Number 3 is New Zealand, 4 is Australia, 5 is Ireland, 6 is Canada, 7 was us, 8 is the Netherlands, 9 is Sri Lanka, and 10 is Indonesia. And the fascinating thing I thought here is it's not just the wealthy countries. And often the report I was reading talked about how religion plays a big part in people's willingness to volunteer, and so the countries that have got stronger faiths in them will spend more time with the volunteering or the giving. And the fact that the country is not wealthy doesn't mean you can't help each other. The helping a stranger number comes up really high. And I think that's a case of actually in a community where you don't have as much, you often will pull together and help more. We see people's generosity here at the mission all the time. People bring us donations, as we talked about earlier, and as a charity, that's the only way that we can continue and that we can survive. In terms of the Giving Tree project, lots of you know about, we have given presents to more and more people each year. The last few years it's been particularly high after Brexit and COVID, and now we've got the cost of living crisis going on, which thinks we'll probably need more presents again. But each year we have had enough donations to cover what we needed, and we thank God for that. But the reason that we get these donations is because of individuals. Individuals give us the things. Individuals listen to God about being generous. When we decided to make this cafe a pay what you can cafe, we didn't know whether we'd get enough money in to run it or anything else. And yet, more people came in for food and more people gave. And we've really found that we've been blessed when we've offered things to people. So we've been generous by offering the Pay What You Can cafe. People have been generous in terms of supporting it. It's been going 6 years like this now, and we're still covering our costs. So yeah, as a Christian charity, we thank God for the donations we receive, but we also thank our donors for their generosity in giving to us. So it's been quite a short one today, but that's because Darren said most of what I wanted to say on Sunday. But I will play to finish and then we'll have another song. Father God, thank you for giving to us here at the Mission so that we can help others. Please continue to help us to support others as times get hard. Please also help us all to find ways to be generous to each other. And we also ask that you look after Nick and Margaret with COVID at the moment, and everyone else who is struggling in whatever way that is. We ask that you are with them at this time and help them to know your love and your peace. Amen.